It is a late Friday night to go through and start answering some fantasy football questions, but we are at the Spurs game. Underdog sent us, so we just got back from San Antonio. So here we are. We will get through everything. Yes, tonight was the Jake Paul fight. I did watch the replay of it when I was walking the dog right before this live stream. All I saw is exactly what you'd expect to see. I saw somebody beating up an old man. Come on, he's an old man. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. And yeah, of course, we're going to be looking at all the team reviews over there on flogfantasy.com. Start set questions, trade questions, the whole 9 yards. Obviously, if you wanted a free team review over there on flogfantasy.com, you know how to get it by now. Just head over to Underdog Fantasy, which again, thank you, Underdog, for sending me out to the Spurs game. And if you use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting that free team review on flogfantasy.com that we're doing every single night. And you'll be getting a free pick as well. If you use promo code FLOCK before the Sunday games, that free pick is going to be a free Aaron Rodgers more than less than half a total yard for Sunday's game. But again, if you wanted that free team review, use promo code FLOCK on Underdog. Go set up an account on flogfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog Fantasy account. That way I can hook you up with a free team review voucher the following day. Now let's check this out for HHH Trials. This is Tyler's top team. It says, second year playing fantasy and my team is somehow winning. I got offered Reed for Rico and Shakir, but said no because I think he's inconsistent to be worth 2 guys and need some type of boom players for the playoff/championship, or will be good when Pacheco comes back. Well, this is a league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers weekly. So completely understand what you are talking about here. Maybe wanting to hold on to a little bit more depth. Now, with that being said, it's a 10-team format. So, I mean, with it being a 10-team league, there should be decent options on the waiver wire, right? Where you're not really going to be stressing too much about depth. It's not like your waiver wire is going to be completely run dry. So if you wanted to go out and make that 2-for-1 deal to get the best player in the deal, not going to fault you whatsoever. Depends on what really you have at running back. But we are Tyler's top team. We are dead last in the league analyzer at the moment. However, we're 7-3. So don't exactly know how that works. Apparently we've been killing the game regardless of the league analyzer not liking us. But anyway, at quarterback, we are effectively just streaming the position. Right now we have Goff. At least in my mind, Goff is not the quality of a quarterback that you are starting every single week, regardless of the matchup. I definitely think that this is a streamer. I think looking at options like Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, these are other players that could definitely be viable depending on who they're going up against. Like I potentially in a good matchup this week for Sam Darnold playing the Jags may actually take, or am I an idiot here? I apologize. No, you have the Lions playing the Jags. Never mind. We're playing Jared Goff this week, but it is going to be a matchup-to-matchup thing. Definitely would like to upgrade quarterback if we can. I'm going over to running back. We have James Cook, David Montgomery, and then you are going to get Pacheco back in the long term. Pacheco's already been ruled out for week 11. So expectation is Pacheco may come back week 12. Maybe it's week 13. We just simply don't know yet. But if that does happen, then all of a sudden, you actually do have the expendable running back depth where I think it's a completely fine move to go through and trade away Rico Dowdle. Now, of course, if you are looking at Dowdle, it's a spot in which there's a positive and a negative coming out of Dallas. Positive is McCarthy coming through saying, yeah, he is going to see an expanded role. He is going to have pretty much every single snap. The negative is, well, it may not matter because it's an absolute garbage offense. But going over to wide receiver, I mean, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown crushing it for us. Obviously, locked and loaded wide receiver 1. Beyond this, Devonta Smith, Khalil Shakir, and then not a ton of depth for this being a 10-team format. Like looking at some of these other names at the bottom end, you have Juju, Wandale, Ricky Pearsall. Looking at my own rankings, I would consider going with Mike Williams over Juju Smith-Schuster. I know you had the 130 receiving yard performance from Juju earlier in this season, but I know we've said this statistic 1,000 times just because it's really interesting. That was the first 130-yard game that you've seen from Juju since 2018. Like, Juju's not that guy anymore. It was just a random one-off game. You now have DeAndre Hopkins in there. I think, honestly, you may have a little bit more hope with Mike Williams. And then going over to what we have at tight end, we're rolling with Kittle, so we have the elite tight end option. So here, if it was a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, I would definitely say, oh, yeah, let's go through and let's trade Shakir and Dowdle, and let's go get that upgrade to Jaden Reed. The issue is this is a spot where you can start up to 4 receivers weekly. So the depth does matter here somewhat. So I would actually probably leave this roster as is. And really the only thing I'd be looking at is potential waiver wire plays. As something that you could look to do is if you wanted to pivot off of Juju Smith-Schuster, which you don't need to, but I think other than looking at Mike Williams, you could potentially try to pick up one of these handcuffed running backs where if you were to see an injury in front of them, then all of a sudden they do turn into pretty exciting options, such as Braylon Allen, Trey Benson, Tajee Spears. Like, I think you could possibly pivot over from Juju to Spears. And then if you were to get an injury to Pollard, then obviously Spears is much more exciting. But outside of that, I think it's a decent roster in terms of how it's constructed. Obviously, it's winning games here. We're about to get Pacheco back in. You can afford to trade away Dowdle. Obviously, I'd like a different player than Jaden Reed if you don't want the inconsistency, even if you are going to have the spike weeks. So I don't like the idea. I mean, I don't hate the idea of the trade. I definitely think you can afford to do it. My only hesitation is it's a little bit of a deeper starting lineup requirement. So you don't need to if you don't want to. But I really do appreciate you. And of course, I'm rooting for you in this league, my guy. But again, thank you so much for taking advantage of that free team review. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, of course. Now let's move this over to our next question. Coming out from Cole Kelly. It's actually a screenshot here. Let me hook you up with both a free trade question and a free start sit question, just in case there's anything else that you want to send over with this team. I'd be super happy to check it out for you, my guy. Says, this is my team with the deadline this week. What moves would you make? I was offered Tyreek for Dobbins from one team and Bucky for JSN from another. Should I do any of these moves, and what other targets would you recommend? Thank you. Thank you, my guy. Here, starting off with the Tyreek for Dobbins. Dobbins is on your bench right now. You're in a spot where you have a ton of production at running back with Bijan, Gibbs inside the starting lineup. Tyreek presumably would slide into a flex for us here. You also have Malik Neighbors. So this is just an absolute loaded team where I am probably just going to take the player that has the highest ceiling, even if they take on some risk. So for me, I would go ahead and honestly, I think it'd be very easy to pivot off of J.K. Dobbins for Tyreek Hill and then Bucky for JSN. I mean, it's whatever. The issue with Bucky is in this league with how strong your roster is, you're really never starting him outside of a Rachaad White injury. Like, the roster is just too good to consider Bucky ever like at running back 2 or for the flex. So I would be more interested in making that deal, selling J.K. Dobbins for Tyreek. And I completely agree at that point, what we probably want to do is turn around and sell a receiver. But as we look at this roster, I think maybe there's a better trade to be making with that additional wide receiver help we have. Because if you go over and you look at what we have at quarterback, obviously we are elite. We have Jalen Hurts, top 3 quarterback the rest of season. Regardless of matchup, you're starting him every single week. He's already through the bye as well. So just absolutely no hesitation in saying that. Obviously, if you are looking at Jalen Hurts, this quarterback that gives you the rushing ceiling, where he's averaging pretty much one rushing touchdown per game. And yeah, so for this reason, you don't need a backup, which we don't have one. Love to see it. Going over to what we have at running back. Again, we're absolutely loaded at the top. We have Gibbs. We have Bijan. Our running back 3 here is Dobbins, but you now get the additional depth of Brian Robinson coming back in. So it does make Dobbins an expendable asset. So again, I think I would prefer Tyreek Hill over Dobbins myself with Gus Edwards coming in. Obviously, Tyreek's been garbage, which is why you're getting a player. I mean, you're trading a player you picked up off the waiver wire for Tyreek. But I still think Tyreek could be a potential decent flex down the stretch here. So I would make that pivot because the big thing is you have the Brian Robinson depth where you can afford to do so. Going over to receiver, we have St. Brown, we have Flowers. Hopefully we'll have Tyreek after that trade. And then down on the bench, you have Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Chris Olave on the IR, Ricky Pearsall. So, I mean, you are just absolutely loaded here at wide receiver after you make this. Now, it is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. So, obviously, the wide receiver depth really can only help you to a certain extent. And for this reason, I think that there's a very easy pivot to make. And there's something that you honestly just kind of have to do. And we have to turn around and try to sell a wide receiver and Tucker Kraft to get an elite level tight end. Like, the team's going to be too good where we have 2 locked and loaded RB1s. On the bench, you're going to be looking at, say, Jackson Smith-Njigba, a Brian Robinson, a Zay Flowers, a Brian Thomas, when everybody is healthy. I understand that we also have Dalton Kincaid banged up here as well, but, I mean, it doesn't matter if you take, say, a Brian Thomas and Dalton Kincaid and go send them for the best tight end that you can get, or if you send Tucker Kraft and Brian Thomas to go get the best tight end that you can. Effectively, it is the same deal structurally for your roster. And that is the main thing that we are wanting to do with this team. Obviously, absolutely star-studded across the board. Make the Tyreek Hill trade. Then at that point, instead of pivoting over and selling JSN for Bucky Irving, what I would probably prefer doing is I'd prefer taking one of the depth receivers and either Tucker Kraft or Dalton Kincaid to go get the elite level tight ends. Now, let's move this over to our next question. But I really appreciate you. I did hook you up with the free start sit question and the free trade question, just in case there's anything else that you need help with here, my friend. But let me see this. The Harp says, how do I get the free team review? I made the Underdog account and deposited, but haven't been able to get the free team review on Flock yet. So if you go through and if you use promo code Flock and Underdog, made at least a $10 deposit, go over to flockfantasy.com the next day because it's going to take us a little bit of time to process it and hook you up with that free team review voucher. Then hit the personal advice button, and then you can go through and you can submit a team review. You go through the process, say, okay, I'm going to submit it for the Flock League. Okay, my team is Fight for Freedom. This is my squad. And then when you get to the page of the creators, it should say $0 here where you can click me for $0 if you have that free team review voucher. So just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I can go ahead and the following day, we know which account to give that free team review voucher to. But let's move this over to our next question. Coming out from Phoenix Lance. Long time member of the flock, always out here. Appreciate you, my guy. Going to be super excited to check this out. Let's get you a free trade question or free start sit question just in case there's anything else you want to follow up with this team on. It says, made some trades to try to assemble an unbeatable wide receiver room for a full PPR format, but Tyreek and Neighbors had me worried. Sitting at 6-4 at the moment, quarterback feels like a black hole. What are some last minute moves I can make to set up a championship run? So we are Warren Brees. We are the number 1 team in the league analyzer, but 100% I understand being worried about Tyreek, where Tyreek Hill has been garbage all season. It doesn't seem like it's getting that much better, even though Tua is back in. I don't think you're the only person worried about Tyreek. Seems like a lot of people are. And also, I mean, obviously, people are concerned about Neighbors based off just how bad this offense is. Now, I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at your team. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do here. Anyway, looking at quarterback, Stroud's been a bum, but we got the report today that Nico Collins, 100% good to go for Monday. And the Harp, if you're still having any issues, please email me, mason.dodd@flockfantasy.com. But if you're looking at CJ Stroud, I think that expectations should be a lot better going into the future once we get Nico Collins back in. And by a lot better, I think he goes from being a low-end QB2 to maybe slightly ahead of the streaming options. Or maybe he's a little more interesting than Goff. Maybe he's a little bit more interesting than Darnold. But obviously not super, super exciting. Looking at what you have on the waiver wire, you have guys like Drake May is really the only interesting piece. So I understand that Stroud's been bad. I wouldn't mind at all if you wanted to pick up another quarterback. You don't necessarily need to play that quarterback right away. But if, say, you wanted to go through and you wanted to pick up Drake May and drop Gus Edwards, just in case you continue to have disappointing games from Stroud, and you could pivot over to May, that'd be fine. My only hesitation, where I don't think it's a no-brainer, is you do have the same bye week for Drake May and CJ Stroud, which maybe makes it a little bit tougher. But still, it is something that you could consider. By far and away, the worst asset on this team would be Gus Edwards, where Edwards may be viable, of course, if you get the injury to J.K. Dobbins. But to be completely honest, the limitation that you would have with Gus Edwards, of course, is the fact that you're just simply not going to get any receiving usage. So that could be something that really limits him in general. Going over to what we have at running back, we have Breece, who, I mean, the Jets offense has been disappointing, but I'd still be fine if Breece was my RB1. Maybe he's not the RB1 you thought he was when you drafted him, but I'm still fine with him there. James Conner, I like as my RB2. Ultimately, our team's strong enough, and we're already 6-4, that we're definitely thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. We have the premium handcuff backs that if an injury were to occur to a guy in front of them, they're immediately a starter, such as Algier, Braylon Allen, Jalen Warren. But we also have some decent depth where you get the guaranteed volume with Rico Dowdle here as well. So it's a really nice spot at running back. I feel like we kind of have all the bases covered. James Conner, best fantasy football playoff schedule you can find. It's a league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers, which is why it makes this team literally perfect. Because you go over and look at wide receiver. We now get Nico Collins back in, which is just a massive, massive boom to this team. We have Malik Neighbors as our wide receiver 2. I'm okay with Neighbors, my wide receiver 1, but I'm freaking pumped. Okay, I see in the chat right now, my guy, of course, you know, I appreciate you. Please let me know if you have any additional questions with this. But like, the thing is, I see Malik Neighbors, my wide receiver 2. I'm freaking pumped. I don't care if it's a garbage offense. He's leading the NFL in targets per game. I see Puka as my wide receiver 3. And hell, I mean, Puka as my wide receiver 2, I'd be ecstatic with. I see Tyreek Hill as my wide receiver 4. And while, of course, here, I do want to lower expectations with Tyreek in comparison to maybe where they were before the season started. If Tyreek Hill's your wide receiver 4 and you're throwing him into the second flex spot in a full PPR format, again, maybe he's not the wide receiver 1 overall. But if he's the wide receiver 4 for your team, I still am ranking him as a low-end wide receiver 1 rest of season. A-Rod says feels like a Tyreek week. I actually think it feels like a Tyreek week as well. Like, to be completely honest with y'all, I ranked the dude at like wide receiver 7 or so in the rankings initially this week. And then I was like, okay, if I put these out, I'm not mentally tough enough to read the comment section. So I moved him down a little bit in the rankings just so we didn't get yelled at. Of course, we reiterated he is a must-start player regardless. But you look at the implied team total. Right now, sportsbooks are putting the Dolphins as the top 5 scoring offense in the NFL this week. I think it's going to be a little bit better going into the future, to be honest with you. We have Rome Odunze as maybe something, maybe not. We'll see. This is the perfect wide receiver room. Going over to tight ends, Evan Ingram, while you have a garbage offense, garbage quarterback play, You get the guaranteed target volume. You have Dalton Kincaid potentially for the fantasy football playoffs here as well, giving you that uptick. So I don't see reasonably what you could do with this team to make it better. I would say maybe trading for a better quarterback and letting go of one of the receivers could be a move in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. But in a league where you can start all 4 of these wide receivers weekly, I think that this is by far and away the best team in the league. I think it's going to be much better now that you are getting Nico Collins back. That not only elevates our wide receiver room with Collins, but it also maybe makes CJ Stroud a little bit better as well. So, looking at the team, even in a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league, that makes it even more geared towards us not wanting to sell a receiver. And the thing is, if you were to sell Neighbors, if you were to sell Tyreek, you have to find somebody who's willing to buy. And because the recent lackluster performances that you have, it's not like you're going to have somebody breaking down your door to go through and send you an exciting option for either guy. I think you're probably sitting as is, to be completely honest with you. So please, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I think my simple thing is I would probably cut Gus Edwards and I'd pick up Drake May. As well, we do think that you are going to maybe have this Texans offense, especially their passing volume, get elevated when you get back in Nico Collins. It is still a spot, obviously, where you don't have the rushing upside with Stroud the way that you do with Drake May. So that's the only thing I would do. Again, please, my guy, I appreciate you. Let me know in the chat if there's anything else that you are wondering with it. I wish I had more for you. I truly do. And also, I did hook you up with that free start sit question and the free trade question. So, of course, if you had anything else that you wanted to send my way on the site later this week or next week, a month from now, or whenever you want, don't hesitate to, my guy. I really appreciate you. But thank you so much for sticking with me forever now, of course. But let's move this over to our next question coming out from To Infinity and Bijan. Let me hook you up with a free trade question and a free start sit question as well, my guy. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. This is saying, need a tight end for this week. I am playing against the Joe Mixon Fight Club. I don't want to drop a quarterback for him to use against me. Any other advice, though, would be appreciated. You've helped me fight back from a 2-4 to a 5-5. Okay, hell yeah, we're still in it. And looking at potentially a playoff spot. Thanks for all the hard work. No, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. Here, this is a 10-team format, so should have slightly better options on the waiver wire if we needed to backfill from some depth. It is a league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers weekly, so that is really nice to see. And it is a league where you pretty much have 2 juggernaut teams here. So we are one of them. The other team is 7-3 at the moment. But why would we be 5-5 with the jug? Okay, so we had the Puka injury. That's what's limiting us. But dear God, is this a super flex league? Why am I viewing it this way? We can just see what quarterbacks are on the waiver wire. This shouldn't be a super flex league because Drake May, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones are all in waivers. And yeah, the league analyzer is telling us that this is a 1 quarterback format. Couple different things with this. Okay, perfect. We got you in the chat. For the love of God, let me know, is this a super flex league or is this a 1 quarterback league? Because if it's a 1 QB league, we for sure right this second drop Matthew Stafford. And we're going to go out there and really pick up anybody. I mean, pick up Keenan Allen, pick up a running back. I don't care. Yeah, if it's a 1 quarterback league, my friend, there's just no world in which you ever start Matthew Stafford here. Whereas if you go over and look at running back, like looking at a player like Zach Charbonnet, if you were to get an injury to Kenneth Walker, then Zach Charbonnet becomes an immediate must-start option for you in a flex spot. So we're almost just wasting the roster spot on Matthew Stafford, where even if Lamar goes down, we're still playing Kyler over him instead. So I would drop Stafford. I would run to the waiver wire, pick up one of the premium handcuff backs, whether you think that's Charbonnet, Algier, Braylon Allen, Jordan Mason, whoever you want. That's just whoever you want and go with. Really doesn't matter. But I would even maybe take it one step further, where if we're looking at both Lamar and Kyler on the same roster, if you don't want to drop Stafford, I mean, you could also look to try to trade away Kyler, where obviously Kyler coming off the monster's performance, and we don't necessarily need him if we have Lamar Jackson. Obviously, if we are looking at Lamar, he is QB1 so far this year, and I don't see that changing anytime soon either. So maybe you could send Kyler and go pick up in a 2-for-1 deal and upgrade at wide receiver, where maybe you send like Kyler Murray with the combination of DeAndre Hopkins and see if we can get up to Drake London. Obviously, if we can get to Justin Jefferson, it'd be a no-brainer. Or maybe see if we can send Cedric Tillman and Kyler Murray to get up to Mike Evans, get up to Terry McLaurin. I think that would be a great move for you. Then at that point, you definitely don't need to drop Matthew Stafford because obviously we can roster 2 QBs. It's just a much tougher spot to justify rostering 3. I'm going over to running back, solid running back room, right? We have 2 locked and loaded RB1s rest of season here with both the combination of Kyron as well as Bijan Robinson. On top of this, we have Chuba, Jonathan Brooks, this combo where I still think that Brooks comes in and potentially takes some usage from Chuba later in this season, while Chuba does remain the starting running back here, of course. And at that point, I think that maybe you're a little bit more concerned about Chuba maintaining the elite level play that he's been at. But still, phenomenal running back depth. Wide receiver, Puka, wide receiver 1, DK Metcalf, solid wide receiver 2. Say the same thing about DeAndre Hopkins. It is a league where you can get up to 4 wide receivers in your starting lineup weekly. So not going to fault you whatsoever if you wanted to go ahead and if you wanted to build around wide receiver depth, which again, I think that's a reason why you drop Stafford, you pick up the extra wide receiver, or you go through and you trade Kyler in a 2-for-1 deal with the wide receiver like Jennings to go get an upgrade inside the starting lineup. Again, we looked at that top team as a potential candidate trade partner. This other team is sitting with Darnold as their QB1. They're getting Nico Collins back in. Obviously, if you could send Kyler and DK Metcalf and go get Nico Collins, it'd be a no-brainer. If you could send Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins for Garrett Wilson, that'd be interesting. They're going over and looking for another team that potentially needs some help at quarterback. This team is Baker and Herbert. If you want to see if we could send them Kyler and get back like Devontae Adams, maybe Kyler and Jennings for Adams, I think that's another move that you could look to make. And then again, at that point, if you wanted to hold on to Matthew Stafford, completely fine doing so. Going over and looking at what you have at tight ends, you have Kate Otten. You have a tight end that you're going to be able to start every single week. Maybe with slightly lowered expectations when you do get Mike Evans back into this offense when the target share comes down. But obviously, Kate Otten on bye week this week, so we are going to have to go through and we are going to have to pick up another option off waivers. So instead of maybe dropping Stafford for the running back, then at that point, we have to look for the best tight end we can get on the waiver wire. In my mind, that's probably going to be Hunter Henry, because if you are looking at the splits of Hunter Henry with and without Drake May, he has just been a significantly better option with May under center, and obviously May will be playing this week. And you do have decent options. Decent projection here for this Patriots offense this week as well. So, bunch of things. One, I think you drop Stafford, you pick up a tight end, probably Hunter Henry. 2, if you could trade Kyler with the wide receiver to go get a wide receiver upgrade, and then just kind of roll with Lamar, and then once we get to the week 14 bye week, then sure, go pick up a quarterback off waivers. and just stream for that week 14 bye. Go pick up Aaron Rodgers for week 14. Go pick up Derek Carr for week 14, whatever that may be. But just because everybody else in your league's rostering 2 to 3 quarterbacks, it doesn't mean that you need to. Assuming, again, you already said this is a 1 quarterback format. But please, again, if you have any other questions about this, please let me know in the chat. I'd be super happy to try to help you out with it right now. And I also did hook you up with a free start sit question and a free trade question on the site. So just in case later in the week or next week, whenever it may be, if you have something you want to follow up with, don't hesitate to send it my way. And we were not watching the fight. I'll show y'all what we are doing. Let me see. This is what we are doing. Underdog sent us to the Spurs game. Underdog sent me to the Spurs game. Shout out Underdog. Got to see Wemby. Got to see LeBron. Got to see AD. Maybe you throw Chris Paul in there if he's relevant. But it was a lot of fun. But just seeing if we have any specific questions about this team right here. Definitely trying to prioritize that. If you were making any moves off the waiver wire, I think wide receiver Keenan Allen's the guy that you're looking at. And again, you could be looking at some of those premium handcuff backs like Zach Charbonnet. If we were able to open a roster spot and say, oh, okay, this player does have a shot to actually make a meaningful difference in my lineup. You're saying, my biggest problem was knowing what to prioritize for the team. The advice was helpful. Well, thank you again. And if there is anything that I could help you out with, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Be super happy to take a look at it for you. And yeah, again, I did hook you up with the free start sit question and the free trade question. So appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out in some way here. But let's move this over. Next question is going to be a trade question coming out from Mother Flocka. Always happy to see you. Let me hook you up with a free trade question just in case you don't have one. So next time you send in a trade question, it should be free. But we are in 8th place. Would you do Swift for Brian Robinson or Tracy straight up? Or Zay for Brian Robinson or Tracy straight up? 4 and 6, 8th place. Let me take a screenshot of this. God dang, the devs messed this up. I would rather have DeAndre Swift. You need to win games right this second. You can't be thinking long term. You can't be thinking of playoffs. You're going to get an extra game out of DeAndre Swift than you would Tyrone Tracy. Going Zay for Brian Robinson, Tracy, I'd be fine with. Running back at the moment, we have Brian Robinson, DeAndre Swift. Wide receiver, we have Downs, Adele, London, Puka, Flowers, Ladd. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. So, yeah, definitely the other trade that you'd want instead is sending like Flowers for Tracy. In a league in which you are incentivized to get rid of wide receiver depth when we can. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next question coming out from King L. And y'all need to ignore these rankings. Honestly, this upsets me. The devs swapped them over to Dynasty. But this trade where we're sending Kyler and getting back Allen. We're sending Lamb, getting back Olave, Downs. Allen versus Lamb. Probably give me Allen rest of season. Kyler versus Olave and Downs. Give me Kyler. Very fair deal. I do think that it is kind of up to you on this front. Wide receiver, we have left over Jefferson, Debo, Jennings, Brian Thomas. So you can afford to go out there and pay up for the elite level quarterback if you want to. Because it is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. But Lucas coming out says, should we pick up Bo Nix and Hill off waivers? So I'm assuming Taysom's our waiver option. I would have Bo Nix ahead of Russell Wilson myself. Tight ends. Now that Higgins is playing, I think you probably would prefer Taysom over Gesicki, but it's close. And for the flex spots, I think it's Hunt and Ladd. You could definitely consider Higgins instead of Ladd McConkey, and I may actually rather have Higgins in my rest of season rankings. My only hesitation with it is if you are looking at Higgins, we have seen him in the past play in a limited capacity and see his role really shrink. So that would be my primary concern. Now, Dave coming out with the start sit question. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and hook you up with a free start sit question. That way next time you send one in, it's on the house. Says, Mason, I'm 8-2 and just wanted your take on my starters. Maybe bench Dobbins since we have a tough matchup and start Tyreek. Thank you for everything, brother. No, thank you so much. Again, my guy, super excited to check it out. So looking at the matchup for Dobbins, what's actually surprising is going up against Cincy here. You do have the Chargers favored by about 1.5. The thing is, you do have Gus Edwards getting involved some, of course. For me, I actually view it as a different thing. I think you have to play Tyreek Hill over T. Higgins. Now, I understand that Tyreek's been extremely disappointing. I get it. But still, you are looking at a wide receiver that has a great matchup against the Raiders. You have much higher projections with the Dolphins offense this week than you have pretty much all season at this point. I think this is the highest implied team total that we've seen with them at any point. Going down to what we have with the flex, I think it comes down to Dobbins, Higgins here. I am actually going to be going Dobbins this week. Again, I think if you are looking at Higgins, if you have solid options, such as this team, this is a very strong roster, it can't hurt to just wait until we actually see him, wait until after the bye, and look at him as an option that becomes viable in week 13. That's the main thing that I would be looking to do. With Dobbins, you get the guaranteed workload. They're favorites in the game. He's going to have a receiving role as well. And then Tyreek, while he's been disappointing, every game that Tua has fully played, he's at least had double-digit points. We've been looking at a small sample of disappointing performances as well. But again, I hooked you up with another free start sit question, so just in case you have anything else. Let me hook you up with a free trade question too, just in case you want to send anything else my way, my guy. Really appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out some. But let's move this over to Jagarza. This is Mooney and McBride versus London. Ooh, I'd probably go with the McBride side. Who else do we have a tight end? We have Njoku. I understand making this deal. I think the raw value is with Trey McBride and Darnell Mooney. If you could instead go ahead and trade David Njoku and Darnell Mooney for Drake London, I think it would be a no-brainer. But I'm just extremely high on what you have with McBride. I think he is on the Mount Rushmore of tight ends. Okay. Now, Redemption coming out with this next team review. Let me hook you up with a free trade question and a free start sit question, my guy, just in case there's anything else you want to follow up with. I'm saying 2-8. How do I upgrade at wide receiver? What sort of deals should we look to send out? League mates can be difficult to trade with. I'm happy at quarterback, running back, tight end, but I don't know how to feel about it. I want to move off Lamb, but rightfully no one is interested. Do we trust Coop, Hopkins, Marv to be consistent starters, or should I move them? Okay, so I'm just going to be completely honest with you. If you're 2-8, I guess maybe it depends on the league settings here in this 10-team league. If only 4 teams make the playoffs, your season's over. At this point, you're playing to not get last. At this point, you're playing to save face. And maybe spoiler for other teams that are in it. If this is a 10-team league where 8 teams make the playoffs, then maybe at that, I'm sorry, not 8 teams. If it's a 10-team league where 6 teams make the playoffs, maybe we are still in it. But the scenario that we are still in it is you need to win out, and you are essentially in the playoffs right now. It is win or go home right this second. So any asset that we are looking at players with future value, but not much production at the moment, are easy sells. If you have somebody like Pacheco on this team, you should have sold him weeks ago, but now we got to sell him now because it is win or go home time. We are Bishop Sycamore. Love the team name. We are 2-8 again. Here, quarterback, we are rolling with the elite option. We have Lamar. No idea how you're 2-8 with Lamar. I figured Lamar would have won you some weeks straight up here. But anyway, elite level quarterback, we're chilling. He does have the week 14 bye, so something that you could consider. I don't know when your trade deadline is, but if your trade deadline's not till like Thanksgiving, after week 12, when Josh Allen's through his bye week, if you wanted to pivot off and sell Lamar for Josh Allen, knowing that you're going to get the extra game and it is win or go home time, you could look to do so. Or maybe after this week, if you wanted to sell Lamar and go get Jalen Hurts and just say, well, the only thing that matters is points in the regular season for me, rest of season, I wouldn't fault you for doing so because the bye week is going to be a little bit painful with the team where it is win or go home time. But obviously, we're super pumped to have Lamar Jackson. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, we're in a great spot with Lamar. Going over to running back, we have 2 locked and loaded RB1s rest of season, one of which is already through their bye with Devon Achane. We have Achane and Bijan. Beyond them, we do have some of the premium handcuff backs. For me, I would probably prefer like Charbonnet over Braylon Allen. I'd probably drop Allen and pick up Charbs instead. Because if you are looking at Zach Charbonnet, this is a running back where if you were to get an injury to Kenneth Walker, we have already seen he turns into a must-start option. With Braylon Allen, we can say, oh, if Breece Hall goes down, maybe Braylon Allen is a must-start. But we can't say it with 100% certainty, the same way that you can with Sharp. So for me, I would rather have Zach, especially Zach's not through the bye. I mean, Zach's through the bye week, whereas Braylon Allen's not. Going over to receiver, it's a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So we have Lamb, Hopkins, Harrison, Amari, Worthy, Deontay. Tight end, we have Kraft and Hawkinson. I'm trying to figure out what you could reasonably do with this roster. Trades-wise, the only thing that I could say that makes a lot of sense for your team, but again, it is much, much easier said than done, is going through and seeing if you could send 2 wide receivers in a package together to get a tier upgrade. Like if you could package together Harrison and Lamb and somehow go get one of the tier 1 wide receivers already through their bye week. Like if you can go Harrison and Lamb and get to Justin Jefferson, that would be a move that we would really like to make. But again, it is just much, much easier said than done. Now, moving over to what we have at tight end, we have Hawkinson and we have Kraft. We are completely fine with this combo, both of which are already through their bye weeks. If you wanted to say, well, I'm just going to be relying on Hawkinson rest of season, there's no world in which I'm ever starting Kraft, or vice versa. If we can go through and find a team that potentially needs some help at tight end, where this team just had the Dalton Kincaid injury, and if you could potentially send them, say, Tucker Kraft and one of our wide receivers, such as Amari Cooper, and pivot over to Jaden Reed, who's already through his bye week, and then just rely on Hawkinson rest of season, I would look to do so. Just again, it is much easier said than done. So the main play that you could, really the only play that you can make with this team, we got a couple different things. Actually, we got a lot. One, knowing you were 2-8, it's win or go home. Moving off of Lamar, maybe picking up Jalen Hurts since you're going to get the extra game with Hurts already through his bye. Dropping Braylon Allen, picking up Charbonnet, getting the running back that we've already seen confirmation. He is the elite premium handcuff. Trying a 2-for-1 tier up where you package together Amari, Harrison, and go get a better option for the flex. Preferably, that's already through his bye week. Or again, maybe package together Amari, CeeDee Lamb, and go get that elite option like Jefferson St. Brown, if possible. Much easier said than done. And that's the issue. I know you're saying that your league mates don't want to trade for Lamb. Can't blame them. Or potentially taking Tucker Kraft and going and trying to use him and a 2-for-1 deal to go ahead and upgrade tight end. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, I did hook you up with the free start sit question and the free trade question. So if you have anything else that you wanted to send my direction, don't hesitate to. I'd be super happy to take a look at it for you, my friend. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. Now, J6 coming out with their next question says 9-1, wide receiver room in shambles. When now is this worth it? Okay, this is a dynasty trade where we are sending Ayuk and getting back Jennings and a second, essentially. Okay, how bad is our wide receiver room truly? It's a 12-team start 10 league. We're going to get Evans back after the bye. We have Evans, Keenan, and yeah, this wide receiver room is garbage. So yeah, you would have, how the hell are you 9-1? Barkley is putting this team on his freaking back. The thing is, Jennings starts for you, and maybe Eckler does as well. Obviously, I'd way prefer getting a first rounder if possible, but based off the play that I gave you before the injury, you're not getting a first. It's one of those like perfect examples where I'm pretty damn confident that we can say Eckler's a 0 after this year. He's almost a 0 now. A little bit better than a 0 at the moment. Jennings, to be realistic, is probably a 0 after this season. And I would rather have, in the offseason, Brandon Ayuk versus the second-round pick. So, I think that you are losing this deal in the long term, but it will help you contend right now. And your team needs to make a play. So if this is the best deal you can get, this is the best deal you can get. I'll definitely let the rest of your league know, hey, I'm about to trade away Brandon Ayuk. Get your offers in when you can. But Dynasty Boogie coming out with our next question says, he will also receive a 2027 first. Okay, thank you for letting me know. So we're trading away Bryce Young, A-Rich, and a 2027 first for Jordan Love. A-Rich isn't worth the first at this point. Bryce Young's not worth the first. Say maybe combined they possibly are. If you're a contending team, I'm fine with it. The only hesitation that I have is trading away your 2027 first puts you in such a compromising position. even if you think that you have a loaded team and we know exactly what the roster is going to be, to put into perspective how far away 2027 is. This season started about 3 months ago. The season didn't even start the season started 2.5 months ago. But let's hypothetically say the season started 3 months ago, which it didn't. We're going to have to go through this 3-month period to end the season, then do it twice during the season. During the off season. So just imagine the time period that we've been playing this season. And do that again, 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 and do that again. And that is when that 2027 pick may actually be coming to fruition. So if you make this deal, and then all of a sudden, not in the 2025 season, but in the 2026 season, or maybe in the 2025 offseason, after the 2025 year, going into 2026, you think you want to maybe rebuild, you won't be able to. You can't rebuild without your own first. So value-wise, I'm completely fine trading away a first, Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. But in reality, it just puts you in a super compromising position in the long term, where it's very tough to say that, to be honest. And obviously, you'd only do it if you're a contending team. Now, Blicky Pearsall coming out. I like the name. This is Brees versus Evans, James Conner. So, the team's not linked, so I don't know exactly the league settings. If this was a 12-team format, where maybe you can get in slightly deeper starting lineups, then yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I will take the James Conner and the Mike Evans side of this, where Mike Evans presumably is a wide receiver 1 when he is back and healthy. James Conner is a 3-down running back that has the best playoff schedule of any RB in the NFL. So I think you're completely fine to take this. Now, Big James coming out. This is Bucky and Reed versus James Cook, Jalen Waddle. Give me James Cook over Reed. Bucky versus Waddle. I don't really care. I'm going to go with James Cook here. I think James Cook is the best player. And obviously, again, ignore these rankings. These are Dynasty rankings. Travis coming out with their next question says, I like this, but Pickens, I don't know about. Accept or counter? Tyreek to London upgrade. Taylor to Achane upgrade. We're paying Pickens to get it done. It's a little bit of a deeper format. You can start up to like 5 receivers. So giving up Pickens is actually a little bit tougher. We're getting DK Metcalf back. You have a bunch of viable RBs. I'll probably go with the 2 best players. I think we'll go with Achane and London. I obviously have to have massive concerns right now about Tyreek. I think Taylor takes a step backwards with A-Rich under center because check down rate's going to be lower and you possibly are going to get vultured more often at the goal line. Now, Peter coming out with this question says, let me know if this is a good or bad move. Chase Brown to James Conner. Very close, up to you. We have them ranked pretty much back-to-back for the rest of season. Khalil versus Trey Benson. Give me Benson. Brian Robinson versus DK Metcalf. Give me DK Metcalf. I think we go with the Conner side. Thing with Brian Robinson is you don't have the receiving usage. So you are primarily just banking on a touchdown being there, which obviously a lot of weeks it should be with how good this offense is, but I don't know if we want a touchdown or bust running back here in that full PPR format. I'd rather have Metcalf. But I know it is extremely late. I'm sorry that we went to the Spurs game tonight, so I promise you, I don't want to say I promise. I can't 100% guarantee it. But more likely than not, this is the first time we've done this year. Other than maybe we did something similar with our, you know what? F it. I'm going to get to y'all's questions. I'm going to skip by the team review real quick, just because that obviously takes a lot more time. But let me at least get to all your trade questions, because I know that y'all need those answered in a timely manner because the offers may go away. So let me answer all your trade questions. We'll get to the rest of the start set questions and the roster reviews tomorrow, but I know I need to get to y'all's trade questions because they could be taken away if we don't give you a good answer at time. But anyway, JB says, I'm having an issue with the site linking my team for trade start sit. Also won't let me add flexes. I'm very sorry, my friend. Let me, hook you up with the free start sit question. I feel bad that you had to send this in a super message. If you're ever having any issues with the site, please join the Discord, which is linked in the description of this live stream. The Discord's essentially a massive a group chat with everybody, and the developers of flockfantasy.com are always in the Discord in the site issues section. So if you send them a detailed explanation of what's going on in the site issues section, they can go ahead and they can help you out. Personally, I haven't heard this issue before, so I'm not going to be able to have an easy answer for you. But one, I hooked you up with a free start set question. So whenever you do figure it out, should be able to send it in for free. And two, yeah, just send it in the site issue section, and one of them would be happy to help you out. Now, Silas Green coming out says, 9-1, what can we do to secure the team for a playoff run? Tight end, we have Kincaid, Dawson Knox. So I don't like this deal at all, to be honest with you. You're definitely downgrading from Jefferson to Puka. While David Njoku obviously is exciting, should be a mid-tight end one rest of season. It's not like the Kincaid injury is going to hold him out of the playoffs. Really just the Kincaid injury is going to be holding him out for the next few weeks. So if we're a 9-1 roster, for me, primarily, I just want to be thinking about our fantasy football playoff upside. And there, I think Kincaid will be back. So I don't want any business in going through and trading for the tight end. I would rather just keep the best player in Jefferson. Now, MLB pitcher, always happy to see you. Says, looking to upgrade my flex, was offered this. Not sure if we can rely on JSN on that. 100% you do this. The only reason you wouldn't make this deal is if you were in a spot where you absolutely needed a win, you were 2-8, you were 3-7, and going, Mason, I can't wait another week or two until Pacheco comes back in. But yeah, I think JSN is just going to be that volatile flex option when Metcalf's back in this offense. You're not going to have the massive target share. And while Pacheco does have a tough fantasy football playoff schedule, it'll still be a 3-down back and one of the best offenses, but one of the best rushing attacks in the league. Dean James coming out says, 4-6, need to lighten my roster with Nico. Any ideas? Okay, so we're needing to bring Nico off the IR. So we're essentially wanting to send an extra player and go get upgrades elsewhere. So Quentin Johnston would be the guy that we cut, I'm assuming, off our team. So Johnston is valued as 0 in this deal. Let's just look at Breece, Braylon Allen for James Conner, big time downgrade. Rigo Dowdle to Calvin Ridley, lateral move up to you. And we're getting Jordan Love for our troubles. I can't see who we have at quarterback right now. For me, I think the downgrade from Breece is too much. Like, I completely understand. Like, Nico Collins coming off the IR. We need to make a deal where we need to open up a roster spot. But in that instance, I don't want to be opening up a roster spot and giving up the best player in the deal at the same time. So I don't like the fact that we're giving up Breece here. I know Breece obviously has been worse than you were hoping he would be. This offense has been worse. But the man still has one game with fewer than 4 targets this season. Like, the receiving usage is still there, giving him a floor. Now, Estero says, do you think I do this trade to compete? League is a 3-player keeper. We'll be able to keep Lamb next season. So Pickens, Lamb, rest of season are comparable. Kelsey obviously absolutely crushes for you. Tight end, currently, we have Andrews and Gesicki. So if this was just a regular redraft deal, I mean, it's for sure going to be the George Pickens and Travis Kelce side. A 3-player keeper is awkward, right? Because a 3-player keeper league, you should always have 3 guys that you can't keep. We can keep Bijan, James Cook. We can keep Bijan, Drake London, James Cook next year, maybe Brian Thomas. But obviously, they aren't as exciting as what you have with Lamb. So looking at this, what I would almost rather do, and I know this is random, but I'm assuming the reason that the Kelce Pickens team wants to make this trade with us is maybe it's a keeper league where they are looking to try to play for next season. And if that is the case, can we structure it in a little bit of a different way? We're not giving them the absolute stud. Like, tell them, oh, Pickens is young, keep Pickens. You're not going to keep Kelce next year. So can we give you Brian Thomas Jr., or you can keep Brian Thomas Jr. next year, or just give us Travis Kelce? If you could make that pivot, I think that would be a no-brainer. Again, the CeeDee Lamb deal, I would really like in a redraft format. It's just tough. Where Lamb should be right back to a top 3 wide receiver next season, right? So in the keeper league, kind of do want to plan on keeping him. Now, Telminator says, how are we feeling, Mr. Dottie? Much love, my guy. Here, Gibbs to Kyron. Give me Kyron, not a massive gap. Puka to Neighbors. Give me Puka, not a massive gap. Be completely honest with you, it is up to you. Ignore the rankings that we have with these players. The devs made a mistake. They're tying in the Dynasty rankings to this. I think I'd probably go with the best player when in doubt with Kyron. But, I mean, with that, too, you get the extra game from Puka in comparison to Neighbors. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would y'all rather have Kyron and Neighbors, or would y'all rather have Gibbs and Puka rest of season? For me, I think it's a fair deal, and I think it's just up to your personal preference. But please let me know, are you going to go Kyron and Neighbors, or are you going to go Gibbs and Puka? Gibbs and Puka, 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 Gibbs and Puka. We got a bunch of people in the chat saying it's tough, but give me Gibbs and Puka. Everybody and their mom is saying Gibbs and Puka. So, like I said, I think it's a personal preference thing. If everybody and their mom is saying Gibbs and Puka, they know more than I do. We're going to listen to them. We're going to go Gibbs and Puka. Now, Twisted T coming out says, should we make this trade? Deadline is today. Well, thank God we decided to answer your question today. Baker, Chuba versus Harrison. I'd rather have Harrison. We have Jordan Love at quarterback, so we have a viable QB starter. With Chuba, I'm going to remain saying this, even though I know, obviously, every time I say it, I just look like a bigger and bigger clown. It'd be very easy for me to just shut up completely. While we expect Hubbard to be the starting running back in Carolina rest of season, if Brooks comes in and Brooks takes 30% of the backfield in the receiving role and Hubbard all of a sudden is a committee back in a bad offense, he's probably not a stud for fantasy football purposes anymore. So I think we go with Marvin Harrison. We go with Harrison. At least I do. I know a lot of other people are going to go with the Baker and Hubbard side. But I don't know if I'm ever starting Baker over Love. So I don't know if that matters, to be honest. Okay. So next question coming out from Go Utes Tommy. Always happy to see you. Says, I have Chase Brown, Achane, Hurts. I can flip Kyler. So Mahomes to Kyler, clear upgrade. Brees to Cup, clear downgrade. Lamb to Etienne, clear downgrade. You can't do this. Especially if you had Hurts. I mean, if your plan is like, hey, I'm going to lose value, but then I'm going to try to gain more value by trading away the guy that I don't need, I think you're just trying to do too much. I think you hold on to, I don't say Brees to Cup's a downgrade. Brees to Cup's a lateral move. Lamb to ETN's, or even Lamb to Kyler's a downgrade. I know ETN's maybe a little bit more appealing with the injury to Tank Bigsby, but still, it's a garbage offense. Especially this week, you're going up against Detroit as a 2-touchdown dog. Like, what's the real upside there? Okay. Now, Rev Ruiz coming out with our next question. Appreciate you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a free trade question just in case there's something else you want to send our way. It's a 14-team league where we are tied for 4th. Is this worth it? Team is Purdy, Reek, Drake, Debo, Jacobs, Montgomery, Ramadre, McBride. I want to upgrade Ramadre, but this is it. We're upgrading from Jacobs to Brees. 14-team league. I understand that, yes, maybe a Ricky Pearsall could be viable, but our team's freaking dominant. We have somehow Reek, Drake, Debo in a 14-team league. Jacobs to Brees is an upgrade in my mind. While Jacobs is in the much better offense, Brees is the more dynamic back with a larger receiving role. So, yeah, I think you go ahead and you take the Jets backs. I understand why maybe another team would do it, though, is if they, in a 14-team league, really needed the extra wide receiver starter, and obviously Pearsall could be viable. Now, Mother Flocka coming out. Always happy to see you. 4 and 6, 8th place. This trade makes me make this trade to win this week and not play Taysom. So, tight end, afterwards, we'd be looking at Laporta, Kate Otten. It's tough. How much points projection-wise, how much better is Pitts really? Like, if you were to run a simulation and you were to play this week out 1,000 times, how many weeks does the difference in points that you get from Pitts and Taysom win you your week? Because 1, there's a chance that Taysom outscores Pitts. 2, even if Pitts outscores him by 3 points, it's a chance you win or lose your matchup by 20. And you don't need, starting next week, you presumably have Kate Otten and potentially Sam Laporta back in. So in that instance, I don't like the idea of trading for just the short-term stopgap. We can maybe look at realistic projections on Underdog to try to get a sense of what the gap is between these tight end projections. Pitts, they have higher or lower 8.5 fantasy points. This is half PPR, though, so keep that in mind. So it should be a little bit higher in a full PPR format. Taysom, they have higher or lower 7.95 fantasy points, which obviously maybe widen this gap a little bit in a full PPR league. But what the difference in projections between Taysom and Pitts are a point and a half. So for me, I don't think you do that deal just for this week. You'll get Kate Otten back out of the bye starting next week. So I think I go ahead. I think we hold Dell. Just because you're never starting Kyle Pitts over Kate Otten. I don't say you're never, but you may not even be starting Pitts over Laporta. They're like the same guy at this point. Now, Bokach coming out with their next question says, at the top of the standings, can afford to wait for Pacheco. Team is linked. I could use the depth. It's a double flex formats. Amari to Tillman downgrade. Looks like we need to update the Tillman ranking in Dynasty. Bucky to Est, and this isn't a Dynasty trade. There's a bug on the site right now. We need to update that. The rankings are thrown off. Ignore all the rankings. It's a bug. But Amari to Tillman downgrade. Bucky to Pacheco upgrade. We're getting estimate for our troubles. The thing with this too is if you think about games played rest of season, you should actually get this. You could potentially get the same amount of games played out of Pacheco as you would with Amari, given the fact that you already have Pacheco through his bye, whereas Amari isn't. So it's not an easy call by any means, but I think I actually go ahead. I think I take the Pacheco side. I mean, Pacheco was practicing all week this week. Now, by no means is it a guarantee that you get him back in week 12, but I think it's a possibility. And then looking at your team, I think it makes sense. Garrett says 3-7, made a lot of trades. I'm leaning towards London. Bijan to London downgrade, Downs Aaron Jones upgrade. Afterwards, we'd have Nico, London, Amari at wide receiver. No, you don't need to do this. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. We're sitting with Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper, wide receiver 3. Running back, we have Bijan, James. Yeah. It's definitely a fair price point, but there's just no reason for you to do. You have the best wide receiver in the league, presumably. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league. You're getting a very clear downgrade there at running back. I kind of view it, you're downgrading from Bijan to Aaron Jones, to upgrade from Amari to London. Without showing your wide receiver room is, I'd rather just keep the 3-down running back. I'd probably just hold on to Bijan, to be honest. Now, Steve Marvin coming out with our next question says, trying to upgrade for the playoffs. Jacobs to Connor, up to you. I mean, Connor does have a really good playoff schedule. Downs to Myers, up to you. Great wide receivers, garbage offenses. They're the clear wide receiver ones. So, can y'all please let me know in the chat, what are you doing here? Are you going Jacobs and Downs? You're going Connor and Myers? As for me, this is yet again another deal that I feel lukewarm on. I think it's up to you. I don't really have a strong stance either way. I think it's a personal preference deal. Okay. We got 1 vote on the Connor side. I just have no idea. If you're saying the only thing that matters is the fantasy football playoff schedule, is the fantasy football playoffs, and we know Connor has a phenomenal playoff schedule, you can go with James Conner, but definitely not something we need to do here. Let me refresh this. Okay, so we're all through the trade questions. So I know we have more team reviews and we have more start-sit questions that we need to go through as well. But we are going to be getting through these in tomorrow's stream. Even if you can't make it to tomorrow's stream, it will be sent to you through the site, your answer. So don't worry about it. You're still going to get it regardless. They'll send you a custom link to the exact time your question got answered. I'm sorry again. I just drove 3 hours to San Antonio. It was only an hour and a half back. Traffic was horrible there. Watched Spurs game, so got back super late. Started the stream super late. Should be the only night this season that we have something like this. Obviously, didn't want to miss the stream. Wanted to try to get y'all your answers as soon as I could. But I will be back. I did walk the dog when we got back and watched the recap. Not the recap, but I skimmed through on Netflix and watched the 15 minutes of the Jake Paul fight. And what it was, at least in my perspective, and this is what I said, I was telling Sal, this is what it was going to be on the way to the game. It was a young dude beating up an old man. Like, it was incredible that they found a way to hype it up. They found a way to market it. But it was an old dude beating up it was a young dude beating up an old man. And I said that the reason you knew that Tyson just had absolutely nothing left is if you looked at how they were marketing it, everything that they put out, like every social media clip and everything, they would put out every social media clip making Mike Tyson, trying their absolute best and making him look like he was in the best shape ever and he was so good and blah, 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 blah. And then they never did it. I never saw any clip like that of Jake Paul. Whereas on the other end, the Jake Paul clips were like, oh, here's something funny of him. So they would show you a clip of like, oh, Mike Tyson still has it. He's great. He's ferocious, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh, look, Jake Paul's an idiot. You knew immediately that he had nothing. But they did a great job marketing it. I mean, phenomenal job. They're freaking, whoever runs the business side of that is an absolute genius. But appreciate y'all. Really hope we get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow. And obviously, we'll be answering all the questions in tomorrow night's stream. But it is late, and your boy needs to get to bed. And if you can, hopefully not too many of y'all are watching this at work right now. If you're laying in bed watching this, put down the phone. Time to go to bed. But much love. Appreciate you. And hope I get to see you out tomorrow.